Hi, I'm Michael Lenz, host of Beyond the Headlines. Join me on my next show as I sit down with newly elected Saratoga Springs Mayor Meg Kelly. We'll be discussing her transition from deputy mayor to mayor and talk about some of the issues she's focusing on this year. I hope you can join me. Welcome to Beyond the Headlines. I'm Michael Lenz. On today's show, I'll chat with newly elected Saratoga Springs Mayor Meg Kelly. We'll discuss her transition from deputy mayor to mayor and talk about some of the issues she's focusing on this year when we come back. Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. I'm joined today by newly elected Saratoga Springs Mayor Meg Kelly. Mayor Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I was thinking before we came on that I remember that you taught me some golf lessons a few years back. And I'm thinking, I don't think either one of us would have thought that we'd be sitting here chatting, me as the host and you as the newly elected mayor of Saratoga Springs back then.
I agree.
And you were a great coach, by the way, and you still are. But I want to talk about your transition, because you were the deputy mayor for I think about a year and a half.
Year and a half, yeah.
So you hadn't your experience in City Hall from that perspective. Mm-hmm. And we had talked before we went on the air about how I transitioned from finance commissioner to mayor, and moving 50 feet down the hall I thought would be a fairly smooth transition. But when I got in, I realized that it was significantly different than what I had anticipated. I thought you had moved a few feet, but you haven't even moved a few feet. You're in the same office.
Same office.
What's it been like transitioning from deputy mayor to now mayor?
Well, I did find it quite different. I thought it would be a really smooth, easy transition knowing the job, but it was a lot more involved in completely different areas. I'm more out in the community. I'm meeting with constituents, being visible downtown, going to fundraisers, just really out a lot of evenings, which was different for me. I was usually done work by 5 or 6 o'clock as deputy mayor, and now I'm getting home at sometimes 9, 10 o'clock. So it does change, and then you have to come in and be the administrator in the morning. So the days become quite long sometimes.
And we had talked about this before we went on the air as well, that we have a unique form of government, which has been in the news a lot in recent years. But in that role as mayor, you have to serve as not only the figurehead leader of the city, you have to chair the council meetings, you have to also administer multiple departments throughout City Hall. So that is different. And as deputy mayor, you're in a position where, as you said, you're handling day-to-day things, very functional things that will allow the mayor to kind of get out there and do the things that he or she needs to do. But now you have to wear that other hat as well. Do you still find yourself kind of thinking in that functional role where you're kind of, I want to get things done, but also you now have to get out into the community in a different capacity? Well,
I think I'm trying to do both. You know, getting things done is different for the mayor, because I'm trying to work more interdepartmental than ever, I did as deputy mayor. As deputy mayor, I was working with my specific departments, but now I'm trying to work interdepartment, trying to move projects forward. So that's different, and I do a lot of traveling through City Hall. I go up and down the stairs lots of times, but I think going out into the community is an important piece. We really have to figure out how to navigate the city to the best of what our people want.
No question about it. And I remember when I first got into politics in City Hall, in our form of government, you need 5 votes. Typically, 3 will get you what you need. Sometimes you need 4. But there's 5 people at that table. And as mayor, you certainly are in charge of running the meeting. But in terms of your ability to pass legislation, you have 1 vote. So you are one person of 5. And I found that relationship building is really an important part.
It's a huge part, and I feel that I'm very good at it, and I think that we're moving along in the right direction, and we'll see. Only the future can tell, but I think that we're going in the right direction.
And your State of the City address, I like the way that you handled that in terms of creating something a little different that we haven't seen before. Typically, we see the mayor get up and give a speech and talk about their goals and plans, and again, that's typical for governments in which the mayor is the director, if you will, of the city. But that's not the way our form of government works. You kind of took it in a different direction, which I think is kind of nice. You had each of the council members get up and speak and lay out their goals. Was that something you had thought about before you got elected, or did you think about that after?
No, I definitely thought about it before.
Yeah.
You know, in this form of government, I think that everybody should have a piece of that stage. I think that we all are equal when we are voting at that table, and I do think that you know, they have a lot going on. And, you know, in the previous State of the Cities, you know, I'm seeing a lot of the mayor's department and not so much of the other departments. So I said that, you know, I'd like to see what they have to, you know, show us. And I'm going to tell you, I got great feedback from the community and my family. It was like, wow, I didn't know that the city had 43 buildings. So, I mean, there's stuff like that that people just don't know. And how many miles of roads they cover. I mean, you have to know that stuff to know how hard it is when you're calling and your street isn't plowed. You know, they have a lot of area to cover. So I think that having each commissioner give a little piece of their department was really critical. And it's bringing people together. It's bringing the council together and making us work as a team to understand what each department is doing.
And definitely when you're the mayor, when the street doesn't get plowed, they call the commissioner of public works and the mayor.
Yeah, and the mayor.
I found that out pretty quick as well.
We get called for almost everything.
Everything. Everybody calls the mayor's office. So definitely an interesting transition, I imagine.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, to me, I think that was, you know, the State of the City was a nice start for us, I think, as a council. I think they were quite surprised that I did it that way, but it turned out really well.
Well, and again, it gives the opportunity for everybody to hear from all the members because it is a commission forum.
Right.
And that way, as you said, everybody kind of knows where everybody's coming from. And it is a nice opportunity to lay out the agenda for the entire council, which is ultimately impacting everybody that's on that council because you all had to vote on it. So it makes a lot of sense. I know there's a lot of issues that were on your plate as deputy mayor that are now still on your plate as mayor. And I want to talk about several of those, the issues that are important to you heading into this year. But let's take a quick break, and we'll get into some of the specific issues after that.
Great.
Okay. Stay with us. We'll be right back in just 1 minute. Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. I'm joined today by newly elected Saratoga Springs Mayor Meg Kelly. And Meg, we've been talking about the transition over from deputy mayor to mayor and how the State of the City brought the council together and said, hey, let's give all of you a chance to lay out your agenda, and which they did, and you have all kind of stated your goals for the coming year. I know that one of the things that you have been focusing on is parking, which I think as far back as I can remember, as a resident and as an elected official, parking has always been and probably always will be an issue in Saratoga Springs because we're a thriving community, because there's a lot of economic growth. There's always a demand for parking. You got some things that you're working on, so tell us about that.
Yeah, we just this week put out a RFP for a parking management company to come in and tell us how to manage our parking. And we had a parking task force run by community leaders, and they gave the city council recommendations in 2017, and I'm putting those into action. And the first thing is to put out our RFP for the management company to come in and take a look at basically our downtown core to see what we can do for parking solutions.
So when you say parking management plan, are you saying is it a private company that comes in and says, we're going to take an assessment of what your parking inventory is and kind of what your needs and try to match them up?
They're going to try to do both. It's a comprehensive plan that we're looking at, and it may involve paid parking. It may not involve paid parking. It's including our garages, restriping, all of these things, they're going to be looking at.
Yeah. So no stone will be left unturned.
No. Hopefully we'll get it, this completed. We have to wait until the height of our season to see the actual traffic flow and the parking situation. So we won't get that probably completed until July or August, and then we'll sit down and see what we want to do from there.
Yeah, I know historically, I think almost in maybe every other administration, we've seen parking decks go up somewhere. The Woodlawn Avenue deck, in both cases, there were 2 that were put up, and even going back as far back as the Spring Street. There is construction projects that I know are are on, well, not necessarily on the burner, that are actually coming to fruition that may bring some parking. I think there's a hotel that might be going up in the center of town somewhere that they're talking about adding 340 some odd parking garage. Is that something that the city is working with them on, or is that something that you're kind of monitoring to see how that goes?
Well, we're monitoring at this point. You know, we haven't seen the full scale of what they're doing. But we want to take into consideration all this new building that we're going to be seeing downtown, and see what we can do. So that will be included, you know, the building, but the actual parking spaces, basically that would probably be for their clients.
That's the problem. That often is the problem when we see projects come forward, and part of their proposal is that, guess what, we're going to bring in 300 or 400 new parking spots. Okay, but you're going to build a hotel that has 300 rooms.
Right.
You do the math, maybe we'll get another 25 or 30. So that always is something you have to look at.
Right. You have to look at that. But we're working with the city center because we know that we need a parking garage. I think everybody's in agreement with that. So we just have to come to the table, and everybody has to get along to, you know, sit at the table, make a plan, and move the parking garage forward.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I know the city center parking garage has been on the burner for years. And I know that so tell us where we are in that, because I know they had come through and made a proposal, and then there was some community pushback, and then I think there were some community meetings with some actual ideas that were thrown out or thrown on the table to consider. And then there's been some, I think, some zoning challenges that have been by property owners. So where does that stand now?
Well, it's in litigation, so we're trying
the private owner has basically said you can't do this.
Right, and so and they're waiting on court decisions for that, but I'm trying to settle it before. So trying to get all the parties together to see if we could sit at the table and work through this. And you know, the solutions are there. We just have to be able to sit and talk. And I don't think that that's happened in the past, you know, few years. I just think that everybody separated, went their own way, and we need to get back to the table where I'm working actively with both parties. So I think that, you know, we're coming close to a solution, and I think that hopefully we can get it started.
And the concept of the parking garage, for those people that are watching that may not be familiar with it, so the city center would extend over the street, and then there would be a parking garage in where there is an existing parking garage, a parking lot right now. It would go up, and there is a private building restaurant that it would be pretty close to, and that is I believe is the party that has done some litigation. So
that's correct, but that design is going to probably change. So we're looking to change that design. You're correct in going over the street with a walkway. I think that has to happen to make us competitive with other convention centers. But really, the design will change from what we're looking at there. Any
discussion about coming back into that parking lot? Because that parking lot is huge. We know that's an all-day parking, a portion of it. Has there been any discussion to kind of extend that area, or maybe that's part of what this parking management plan will look at? Well,
actually, you know, that's a different RFP, is the High Rock parking lot. So that will be coming out, you know, as we're working on it as we speak. And but that is something that we're really looking to narrow it down to get exactly what we want, and then put that out. So that will be coming out in the next few months. And but we want to look at that entire lot.
Yeah. I've always thought, going back to my time in office, which was over 12 years ago, I know that was in play.
Right.
So, you know, that seems to be a logical place where you would do some additional parking garage structure, if you would. So, good. That's excellent. So, I know there's a couple other issues that are on your plate, but we have to take a quick break.
Okay.
And when we get back, we'll talk about those.
Great.
Okay. Stay with us. We'll be right back in just a minute. Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. I'm here with Saratoga Springs Mayor Meg Kelly. Mayor Kelly, we've been talking about some of the issues that you've been working on, and I know an issue that you've talked about not only in the campaign, but you've also talked about it in your State of the City, and are moving forward on some projects that are, I know, have been in process to a certain extent, but you're moving them forward. Affordable housing. I know, again, going back to my time in office, was a big issue when I was in office, before I was in office. It continues to be an issue. I think it's an issue in every community that has a level of economic success, is how to balance that affordable housing with the economic development that's occurring all around. So what are some of the projects that are going forward now?
We have 3 projects that are coming up quite quickly. We have our West Avenue Entrada project by the railroad station, and that's going to have about 150 units there for workforce and affordable housing. And then South Broadway, the old Spa City Diner, is going to be about 105 units, and that's mixed use. That'll have retail on the front side of Broadway, and then the apartments in the back. And then also the Housing Authority has a project on the docket over at Stonequest on their property for 90 units.
So when we talk affordable housing, is there a definition of parameters with which developers are obliged to operate within, or do they have requirements?
They do have requirements to get their funding, and we want requirements for pilots that we give them. So we definitely, and they're all different. There's not a set, formula. We just work with the developer to create their project. But it does have a sliding scale, so all different income levels will be eligible for this. There'll be an application process, and they'll be vetted out, and that's how this will come to fruition.
So it's a voluntary process to a certain extent. It's voluntary in the sense that they're not obligated to do it, but in order to get certain things in terms of funding sources, they have to meet certain requirements.
Correct.
I know there was some discussion, and I don't know if it's come up in your processing of this, but I remember there was talk of inclusionary zoning, which I think was fairly popular for a while. I don't know if it still is, but that was actually going into your zoning codes and making it a requirement of certain zoning districts that a portion has to be affordable. Is that something that's been discussed or moved forward at all?
It hasn't moved forward. We discussed it last year when I was deputy mayor. I remember the conversations. There is an element in the purchasing of homes that is the problem, and they have to figure that out before we can move forward. The banks were not happy with that piece of it when the foreclosure might come forward.
Yeah, that's true. And this was all pre the housing crash that occurred, back in 2008. So it's always a challenge, and I know Steve Sullivan from Longfellows and the Old Bryan Inn has been a strong advocate because, that's his workforce. Those are the people that are working in his restaurants and his hotel, conference center. There's always been a huge demand, and it's such a balance in a community like this because we are a vibrant community to a certain extent. We have a significant tourist component to what we do, and when you have that, you're going to have a significant workforce that's going to be part of that.
Right.
And balancing that has always been a challenge for finding places for them to live that are, we're not talking about necessarily low-income housing, which is important. We're talking about affordable housing for the waiter, the waitress, the busser, the person that works at the Saratoga Hospital. We're not talking about low-income housing. We're talking about affordable housing.
Right.
It's got to be a challenge.
Well, it's a huge challenge. And I met with the hospital, and they have 2,600 employees, and 15% live in the city. So that's a statement right there.
Yeah.
That they can't afford to live in our city. So the West Avenue, development will be great for that hospital employee that wants to live closer to work and not outside of the 12866. So
yeah, I know that was the case a lot in terms of you have people that are coming from Corinth, very far away, and having to try to figure out how to get to work, is a big challenge for a lot of people in the workforce. So hopefully we'll see some of those projects kind of come to fruition.
And you have to work with your transportation too when you're building workforce and affordable housing. It has to be on a bus line.
Yeah.
That's critical.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to build affordable housing, on the outskirts of the city where there's no bus line, that doesn't work. So we have to keep it on the bus line. So all of that is taken into consideration.
And the projects such as, I think it's Sobro, West Avenue, the Housing Authority, are these slated to be completed sometime this year, or are we just going to see them start? Do we know where they are in terms of the process?
West Avenue will be starting this year.
Great.
For sure. Yep, and I would say probably 2019 for South Broadway, and I would say probably maybe 2019, 2020 for Stonequist. I'm not sure.
That's good. So at least they're in process.
Yep, they're in process. They're all moving forward. Yep, and it will be. You know, I think HUD said we need about 180 units to, you know, help our workforce housing, and this is going to give us, I think, over 300.
That's great.
So 300 to 400. So it'll really help out.
Definitely. And kind of segueing off of that, the Code Blue Shelter, which I know was started under Mayor Yepsen, and it's been critically important, especially all of us who have lived through this past winter, just the bitter cold, the snap that we had. So Code Blue has been in place for a number of years. Bring us up to speed on where we are. I know the Mitsons gave a significant contribution in order to provide a permanent Code Blue shelter. There's been some lawsuits from people within the neighborhood. It's gone through all the zoning issues. Apparently they've been resolved. Where are we? Where do we stand with that now? Well,
I think that the Mitsons have generously donated $1 million for this facility. We have gone through the process, and we have received the approvals to move forward, and I do believe that there is new litigation from a community group of about 20 people that are appealing that decision. So it is still in the litigation field.
So nothing, no shovels in the ground until
no
that
shovels
happens.
in the ground, which is really unfortunate. Whether it be where they are proposing it or not, we need to get this done. And now we're looking probably at another winter, next winter, where we don't have a permanent home, which puts a lot of pressure on a lot of, you know, other businesses in the community to support this.
Right.
You know, they get their meals from the restaurants. They're working, you know, in between 2 or 3 different facilities to house the Code Blue, and it's a tough thing for Shelters of Saratoga Springs, Saratoga, to keep up and running financially. You know, especially with this winter, it's really draining.
Yeah.
So we do need to get a solution for sure.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that will get resolved and get resolved soon. We only have a short amount of time left, but very quickly, understand charter change. Just yesterday, we got news that that by about 10 votes.
10 votes.
It was defeated, the changing of the charter, so you're going to continue forward in the commissioner form, but there are going to be some legal appeals. Is that your understanding?
We think that, you know, they might appeal. We don't really know, but we're moving forward, you know, in the commission form of government, and we will be looking at our current charter, making changes in that charter, updating it, and moving forward in this form of government. So that's to be seen.
I don't think we've seen the last of the charter change debate.
I don't think so either.
That's for sure. But in the meantime, I wish you best of luck in your new endeavor as the mayor of Saratoga Springs. Great job so far, and we love having you on the show. And as things progress and some other issues come up, I hope we can have you back on.
Great. Look forward to it.
Great. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Why don't you stay around for just a couple of minutes? I'll be right back and wrap things up. I want to thank Saratoga Springs Mayor Meg Kelly for being my guest today, and thank you for tuning in. Join me next time as I continue to talk with the business and political leaders shaping the headlines here in Saratoga Springs and the surrounding communities. For everyone here at Look Media, I'm Michael Lenz. Thanks for spending part of your day with us.